I never imagined a black maid's daughter could change a billionaire's life forever. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It was a Friday afternoon, and the air was thick with humidity. My mom's laughter echoed down the hall as she bustled about, arms full of fresh linens. The smell of her favorite jasmine soap lingered, mixing with the stale scent of the grand estate where she worked. It was a mansion too big to embrace, shiny and sterile, each room holding secrets I could only guess at. I peeked out the window. The driveway stretched long, leading to towering gates, swarmed with black cars. But one car caught my eye, a sleek, silver beast with tinted windows. My heart raced, and I felt a pull, a strange connection. I wasn't supposed to be near rich people. They lived in another world, or so Mom always said. Mom had been working for the Whitakers for years, a smile on her face that masked her weary soul. Mr. Whitaker, a ruthless billionaire, had everything except kindness. I watched him strut around like he was invincible, but I knew he was just a man hiding behind layers of grief and power. That day began with me wondering how someone could hold so much and feel so empty. I never thought I would step into the eye of that storm. Suddenly, the door swung open, and chaos erupted. The wealthy patrons, glimmering in their fancy attire, shuffled in like a parade. Laughter rang like bells, sharp and piercing. My mom's smile faltered as they spilled into the grand room, their happiness too loud. In the midst of the crowd, I spotted a girl with fiery red hair and eyes that glimmered like emeralds. She stood by a golden staircase, her expression a mixture of curiosity and defiance. I felt an unmistakable tug to her presence, a strange magnetism. She wasn't like the others. The whispers around her felt different, something darker. It sent shivers down my spine. And then I heard a piercing scream that cut through the air like a dagger. I rushed towards the sound, my heart thumping wildly, confusion clouding my mind. I shoved through the crowd until I saw her. The red-haired girl had fallen, her delicate frame crumpled on the marble floor. The laughter stopped. Silence descended, thick and oppressive. All eyes turned towards her, but mine snapped to Mr. Whitaker, his face pale, shock frozen in time. I couldn't breathe. I knew instinctively that this moment would change everything. I felt my legs tremble beneath me, and I could see the sorrow etched on my mom's face from the corner of my eye as she rushed forward. It was as if I had stepped into a wild movie, but this was real. Life was unfolding, and I was caught right in the middle of it. And then it happened. A secret, hidden deep within that sprawling estate, was about to surface. A secret that would connect me to a man I never expected and breathe life into a new future I couldn't fathom. But a part of me wondered, was I ready to step into this chaotic world? Would it swallow me whole? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The sirens wailed in the distance, a cacophony of urgency that drew closer with every passing moment. I stood frozen, watching the red-haired girl crumpled on the expansive marble floor, a haunting contrast to the opulence surrounding her. My breath hitched in my throat as I turned to glance at Mom. Her eyes were wide, disbelief etched across her features. In that instant, they mirrored my own confusion, a shared moment of dread. Chaos reigned as people began to murmur, their voices rising and falling like waves crashing against a rocky shore. I felt an unsettling sense of detachment, as if I was immersed in a surreal dream from which I could not awaken. The vibrant energy of the party dissolved, leaving only a grim reality, one that could change everything I thought I knew. Mom reached the girl first, kneeling beside her, cradling her head gently. The world around us faded, and all I could hear was the soft, rhythmic pulse of breaths filling the silence. Mr. Whitaker, initially paralyzed, snapped into action. I felt the tension in my core as he leaned down, panic casting shadows across his face. The facade of the billionaire crumbled as his hands shook, revealing a man consumed by vulnerability that I dared to inch closer, an impulse pulling me towards the scene like a magnet. As I neared, I caught a glimmer of emerald in the girl's eyes, the same piercing gaze that had beckoned me from across the chamber. I saw it fade, a flicker of consciousness waning in the chaos. And then, unexpectedly, someone brushed past Maya Short, older woman with a frazzled bun and a worried frown. She kneeled beside Mom, placing a hand on her shoulder. "I'm a nurse. I can help," she said urgently, her presence a welcome anchor amid the storm of panic. With a nod, they began to work together, a synchronized dance fueled by primal instinct and desperation. I stood vigil, watching as Mr. Whitaker's face shifted from despair to a boiling rage that felt palpable in the air. His gaze met mine, and for a fleeting moment, our worlds collided. I saw hurt lurking behind his stern exterior, a man tethered to something deeper than just wealth or power. "Get her up," he shouted, breaking the stillness. The agony in his voice felt like a knife that slashed through my own fear. That was when I felt something heavy settle in my chest. I had always seen wealth as a barrier between us, a line drawn in the sand. Yet now, in this moment of shared crisis, I understood grief knows no boundaries, and neither does compassion. As paramedics rushed in, they pushed through the throng of shocked guests, their uniforms bright against the opulent decor. The scene unveiled a strange tapestry of life, each person dimming in the backdrop of those who fought for survival. I clutched my mom's arm, and we both drew in a shaky breath, lulled into an unspoken agreement that together we would face whatever storm was coming. But just as the medics began to load the girl onto a stretcher, still unconscious, a hush fell over the crowd. I was jolted from my thoughts when Mr. Whitaker's voice cracked through the din, raw and pained. "She's my daughter." The enormity of his words echoed in my head, striking like a thunderclap. His daughter? The realization spiraled into a vortex of conflicted emotions. The girl I felt connected to, the one I had been drawn to across a crowded room, held within her the threads of a lineage that entwined with mine in a way I never could have imagined. As the medics carried her away, I felt an ache blossom in my chest. A shared fate was unfolding, yet a gaping chasm of uncertainty lay between us. I had stumbled into this world of privilege, and now I was tethered to a tragedy far greater than I ever intended. Mom squeezed my hand, grounding me in the severity of the moment, but also in the promise of togetherness. There was a weight to the silence that followed, almost as if the air itself was holding its breath, waiting for the next turn of events. As I turned to catch a final glance at Mr. Whitaker, I saw him crumple, the titan of industry reduced to a mere shadow, his face buried in his hands as he fell to his knees. The intoxicating thrill of chaos enveloped us. Yet deep within me stirred a strange curiosity and a flicker of hope. The ties between our lives had tightened in ways I was not prepared for. How would this revelation reshape our destinies? Just then, a phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me back to the present. I pulled it out. The screen illuminating my facete was a message from an unknown number. "You have to tell him the truth. You don't know what he's capable of." My heart raced, propelled forward by a mix of dread and urgency. Who was this person, and what truth did they refer to? The cliffhanger of my life had just deepened, leaving me standing on the precipice of a chaos I was barely beginning to comprehend. The hum of commotion settled like a cloud of dust in my mind as I clutched the phone, entranced by the cryptic message. Strangers moved around me, their voices merging into a dissonant blend, but all I could focus on was that flickering screen and the pulse of anxiety throbbing within me. What truth? About whom? The questions swirled like autumn leaves caught in a tempest. Mom's eyes darted to the device in my hand, her worry palpable as she knelt beside me, the chaos momentarily forgotten. "What is it?" she pressed, concern sharpening her features. I hesitated. How could I explain with mere words the weight of this moment? The shock of Mr. Whitaker's revelation, the intoxicating pull toward a girl whose life hung in the balance, and the enigmatic message that now tethered my fate to theirs that I don't know who it's from. But they said I trailed off, my voice faltering. A deep breath anchored me, and I relayed the essence of the urgency, without revealing too much of the shrouded sender. Mom's brow furrowed as she processed the implications. "You have to be careful. Just because someone sends a message doesn't mean they have your best interests at heart." She was right. I felt the weight of that truth settle around my shoulders like the heaviness of an unwelcome cloak. My thoughts wrestled with uncertainty, battling against an instinct that urged me to uncover more. What was the truth that could shatter lives like fragile glass? In that moment, the sirens from the ambulances faded into the background, and the vast elegance of the venue felt stifling. Each golden chandelier felt like a mockery of the somber reality unfolding. I scanned the crowd, now transformed into specters of intrigue and fear. What lay beneath their polished exteriors, their polite smiles tinged with apprehension. As if cued, Mr. Whitaker rose from the ground, the anguish still stark upon his face. Yet determination replaced the shadows that had clouded him moments earlier. Shaking off the weight of despair, he started to command the room, barking orders for the guests to calm down, directing the staff with a newfound urgency. In this tumultuous moment, he was not just a billionaire. He was a father who had faced the abyss and was now grasping for anything to pull him back. Amidst the rising tension, I witnessed a bewildering act, while I remained lost in my own thoughts. A young man, perhaps the same age as me, pushed his way through the crowd and approached Mr. Whitaker, who was still visibly shaken. Dressed in an understated tuxedo, he spoke softly, his voice low but firm. "Sir, we need to secure an area for privacy if her condition worsens." His kindness amidst the chaos felt like a flicker of warmth that tempered the cold dread circulating around us. But my heart refused to be anchored by external kindness, hungering instead for clarity. Suddenly, the message buzzed again in my pocket, drawing my focus back. Whoever had written those words had sparked an undeniable urge within me, one that yearned for the truth. I felt suffocated by indecision. If I chose to seek answers, what consequences would that have for the girl, for Mr. Whitaker, and for us? I turned to Mom, feeling a surge of desperation. What if I need to talk to Mr. Whitaker? What if I can help? The thought cut like a knife, sharp and stinging with both fear and the burgeoning desire to take action. She looked at me, her face lined with concern, yet softened by an instinctance I recognized. "You need to protect yourself too. This world is filled with complexities you might not be ready to face." With her words reassuring yet stifling, I found myself torn. The scene never dissipated. The world spun around Mr. Whitaker as he orchestrated calm amidst chaos. The paramedics hustled away, and what had once felt like mere curiosity started morphing into an urgency, based on invisible ties. If to confirm my dilemma, my phone buzzed once more, and I swallowed hard. "There's a meeting tonight. You need to be there. If not, things could spiral out of control. Trust me." Whoever the sender was, they spoke now not only of urgency but a looming threat shadow lurking beneath the surface of this tragedy. What does that even mean? I mumbled to myself, fingertips dancing nervously over the screen. The nascent bond one felt with the red-haired girl, a bond now marred by crisis, tugged at my heart. The potential of my own story intertwining with theirs sent ripples of anxiety cascading through me. I would have to face Mr. Whitaker. I needed to know the truth, and what lay beyond this threshold of despair. That moment crystallized in my mind, knowledge claiming swift permanence. If I took the plunge, I would shatter the fragile glass of my own existence. With palms clammy and determination igniting within, I pocketed the phone and turned towards Mr. Whitaker. Would he see me as a trespasser or a lifeline? The weight of my decision loomed large, and even as I approached him, my heart raced with unvoiced fears. But just as I took a breath, ready to step into a world that now threatened to consume me, the unmistakable sound of a loud crash echoed behind us, breaking through the tension-laden air. I spun around, bewildered, as the hasty footsteps and panicked cries reached a fever pitch. Something was about to change. The impending storm I felt brewing was no longer a distant threat. It was here, and it was determined to reveal everything, whether I was ready or not. The chaos morphed around me as that crash resonated like a cannon, igniting panic in every corner of the grand ballroom. Guests who had once stood bespoke in their tuxedos and gowns now scattered like leaves in a gust, their laughter replaced with shouts of confusion and fear. The atmosphere shifted, and I could feel the ground tremble beneath my feet, the cacophony a violent backdrop to the thumping of my heart, which quickened with every passing breath. Mr. Whitaker, despite his earlier composure, turned ghostly pale, his eyes wide with alarm as the source of the commotion emerged from between the thronged bodies. A waiter had toppled over, his tray flying through the air before shattering on the marbled floor, crystal remnants scattered like broken dreams amongst the elegant chaos. It was a temporary distraction, but the energy of the room distorted, as if the universe had chosen that very moment to unveil hidden truths that I couldn't help but look around, observing the panic-stricken faces of the gathered crowd, suddenly rendered so fragile against the backdrop of the unfortunate event. What lay beneath their polished exteriors? Their casual conversations about investments or vacations suddenly echoed hollowly in this vulnerable moment. But as I scanned the crowd, searching for solace, I caught sight of Hera's flash of red hair amidst the chaos. The girl, the daughter of a maid who had spent too many nights in the shadows, now stood out like a beacon of uncertainty. It was as if she were wading through an ocean of fear, each step toward understanding laden with a weight she couldn't bear alone. My heart ached at the thought of the struggles she faced, yet I longed to bridge the chasm between us. I tore my gaze from her as another wave of panic swept through, a rush of heat surging with anxiety. The urgency thrummed in my veins. I had to find a way through this moment of turmoil. The pulsating heart of chaos needed direction. My eyes locked on Mr. Whitaker, who seemed rooted to the spot, his universe shattering around him. He needed guidance, a steady hand amidst the storm of emotions that swirled like a raging maelstrom. Mr. Whitaker, I called, cutting through the noise as I stepped tentatively closer. He turned, his face a canvas of vulnerability, holding the weight of despair and determination. For a moment, time itself felt suspended. In his gaze, I saw flickers of the worry, but also remnants of hope. What would happen? He stammered, recovering from the wave of chaos that had engulfed him. Someone might know who sent the message. I think I could help. The words fell from my lips almost instinctively, the urgency growing as I felt my own resolve solidifying against the uncertainties. Before he could answer, the young man from before stepped forward, his composed demeanor a welcome contrast to the surrounding madness. Sir, we need to secure a safe area for those injured and control access to this room. The last thing we need is for rumors to spread, he said, his voice firm yet understanding. In the moments that followed, he turned toward me, measuring my intent. In that small gesture, he offered a flicker of solidarity, anchoring me while I fought to steady my thoughts. I nodded, a silent agreement between us. Every step echoed with new urgency. The message had transformed from an enigmatic threat to a call for action, and with every passing second, the weight of knowing pulsated like a heartbeat. As we sprung into motion, coordinating efforts amidst the chaos of frantic guests, I felt a shift within the knowledge that I was part of something pivotal, that perhaps I could indeed change the course of this night. Mr. Whitaker's focus drilled through the crowd, seeking clarity amid the clamor. I latched onto this momentum, driven deeper into the fray by a sudden rush of responsibility. But as we gathered those still seated, helping to usher them away from the chaos erupting in the room, a figure slipped through the doorway, a dark silhouette that materialized like a phantom from blurred thoughts. The change was palpable. It felt as if the air thickened, charged with tension. A hush draped over the scene, broken only by the soft thud of heeled shoes against the floor. I squinted. Within that veil of shadows emerged a familiar face, the girl with the red hair, shrouded in determination, her eyes wider than I'd ever seen. But she wasn't alone. There, alongside her, was another presence, one that sent quakes of recognition through me, a woman whose face I had only seen in photographs, yet enough to send the chords of possibility resounding. The clash of recognition twisted my thoughts. What was she doing here? The tension built to a breaking point as the girl's voice broke through the silence, tinged with conviction, softened by fear. I know why you're here, and I can help, but there's someone after you, someone we can't ignore. My breath hitched as the weight of her words dug into me. A new layer of complexity unraveled, and the anticipation spiraled into something darker, something unexplored. This revelation spun a web of confusion, fear, and a spark of hope that perhaps, amidst the madness, we could confront whatever threat loomed. Yet despair flared at the thought of what we might uncover. I turned to Mr. Whitaker, whose expression had shifted from apprehension to steely resolve, echoing in his gaze the truths we were on the brink of uncovering. As the pieces began to fall into place, Reality bore down like an iron weight. We were stepping into shadows no daylight could pierce. Yet even as I grasped for understanding, the tension surged in the air, and the last shreds of calm shattered completely as the lights flickered ominously, plunging the room into a darkness that seemed almost alive, threatening to consume us whole. In the suffocating darkness, the cacophony around us faded to a distant hum, like the echoes of a long-forgotten melody. Shadows danced, swirling with an unease that mirrored the chaos of our emotions. I could feel the frantic heartbeat of the room pressing against my own, each person a pulse in this living entity of fear and uncertainty. "Everyone, stay calm." Mr. Whitaker's voice rang out, firm but trembling, fighting to pierce through the engulfing gloom. "Let's stay together. We need to find a way out of this." Beside me, the girl with the bright red hair nervously tugged at the hem of her dress, her other hand clutching the woman's arm, the one who, until moments ago, had stood only in the periphery of my thoughts. I strained to see her face, desperate for a hint of familiarity amidst the shadows. Light flickered above, casting erratic glimmers that revealed fear-laden expressions, the mask of composure some wore cracking under pressure. "Lila, I can't," the woman murmured to the girl, her voice shaky, and I caught the whiff of desperation. "Mom, please," Lila pleaded, her voice rising above the encroaching panic. "We need to tell them." But what could they possibly know? A part of me wanted to pry, to demand answers, but the weight of urgency demanded action instead. I stepped forward, guided by instinct. "What do you know?" I asked, my voice steady despite the quaking uncertainty in my core. Lila turned her gaze toward me, and I caught a spark of something deeper. Her eyes widened in awe of my boldness, but tempered by the chaos she had already witnessed. "The message," she began hesitantly before the darkness swallowed her next words, her voice barely more than a whisper against the heightened atmosphere. "It's not just a threat." Suddenly, the room flickered back to life, a pulse of brightness that momentarily dispelled the shadows. In that brief explosion of light, I felt a kaleidoscope of emotions whirl inside me, desperate for clarity. The faces around me were illuminated. Some were filled with confusion, others with understanding that hovered just beyond my reach. But before Lila could finish, the lights cut out again, plunging us back into the overwhelming void. Heart pounding, I fumbled for anything solid to ground me. "Stay close." Mr. Whitaker's voice carried through the darkness, but something in his tone sounded different. There was an edge, a sense of urgency that twisted around me like a vice. I could feel him at my side, a barely there presence whose focus sharpened as our collective anxiety surged. In the dimness, I became acutely aware of the girl's central role in this unwinding mystery. "Lila," I called out, desperate to anchor my thoughts. Her voice emerged, buoyed by determination. "They know about the connections about you, sir. I overheard them talking. There are people who want to exploit your reputation, your status. They'll stop at nothing." My heart faltered. I had built my world around an empire, brick by brick, but had I truly considered the enemies such power might attract? Each rise in the hierarchy had its enemies' ghosts haunting the edges of wealth. "Who?" I demanded. "Who's behind this?" Its Lilith's words were drowned as a loud crash splintered against the walls, making the very ground beneath us seem to shudder. I felt the electric heat of fear ignite the air, engulfing the room like the flames of an impending firestorm. "Get back!" The dark silhouette of the mysterious man from earlier pushed through, his stance unyielding. I sensed authority in the way he held himself even against the backdrop of chaos. It was unsettling and strangely comforting at once. With a deep breath, I found the courage to ask the question that burned through my mind like wildfire. "Are you with them?" But before he could answer, another sound louder this time cut through, deafening and menacing, sending echoes scraping against the very walls of our sanctuary. A voice, cold as ice, roared through the collective fear. "You can't hide forever, Whitaker. The truth will be your undoing." There it was, the pronouncement that weighed heavily on my mind, the churning chaos of emotions battering at the gates of my heart. Was it truly a warning, or an ominous prelude to something unimaginable? "Run!" The shadowed voice of Lilith's mother resonated through the chaos, a directive filled with urgency, echoing within me like a battle cry. As astonishing revelations and despairing fears collided, I was forced to confront the truth. I was not just a billionaire entwined in a web of lies, but an unwitting player in a game that held the fate of lives fragile as glass in its balance. With every fleeting second, every racing heartbeat, I knew we were mere moments away from uncovering a reality I had never anticipated as we struck forward into the unsettling shadows. I could feel a disquieting sense of clarity that within the chaos, those bonds I had briefly glimpsed with Lila and her mother might be our only salvation. Or perhaps they would lead us deeper into the perilous unknown. Time suspended around us as the clash of worlds unfolded, a billionaire facing shadows that had always lingered just beyond my peripheral vision, now threatening to close in at an alarming speed. And as I reached out to grasp Lila's hand, a chill pierced the air, gathering strength in its frosty embrace, until it morphed into a sense that the darkness was alive and closing in, dragging the last threads of light into the depths. We stepped forward into the abyss, unsure of the next breath we would take, but with the understanding that whatever lay in the shadows was drawing nearer, its haunting whispers echoing a perilous truth. Change was inevitable. The echoing darkness enveloped us as we pushed forward, the shadows thickening with every tentative step. Each breath felt like a battle, my pulse racing as fear mingled with a flicker of hope that perhaps we could outpace whatever malevolent force was stalking us. "Lila, where are we going?" I whispered, desperately searching for the light that could guide us out of this impending doom. "What do we do next?" Lila's grip was firm but trembling, a mixture of resolve and trepidation. "There's a service door," she replied, her voice a beacon amidst the chaos. "If we can get there, I think I know a way to the exits." We navigated through the shadows, following Lila's lead as she moved with surprising familiarity, considering the pandemonium around us. Mr. Whitaker's silhouette remained close, his presence steady, yet I felt an unsettling tension coiled beneath his practiced demeanor. The reality of his predicament so intricately tied to mine. Till alas was a weight pressing heavily on my chest. In those fleeting moments, I couldn't help but contemplate the fragile nature of our lives. One whispered threat could collapse it all in an instant. The revelations swirling around us seemed to swirl like a storm, each potential truth dangerous enough to upend everything I had built. Suddenly, Lila halted, her breath hitching as the murmurs of chaos crescendoed, vibrations pulsing through the floor beneath us. It reminded me of the time I had stood on the edge of a cliff, the wind howling about me, both exhilarating and terrifying. But this was no thrilling reckoning. It was a confrontation with demons I hadn't known existed until that very night. "What is it?" I asked, my voice barely breaking through the tumult. "We can't go that way." Lila's voice was a mix of fear and resolve as she pointed toward a set of double doors flanking the hallway. "They're guarding it." The luminous glow of emergency lights flickered uncertainly at the other end, casting unsteady shadows on the walls. "What about that way?" I indicated to a slight glimpse of movement, figures huddled around the doors, their faces obscured but their intentions unmistakable. "Too risky," Mr. Whitaker interjected. "We need to find a hidden route." As we began to retreat, the resonance of clattering footsteps drew closer. My heart raced at the thought of being cornered, trapped in a scene I couldn't control. Just then, an unexpected clamor erupted from the shadows, a thud and a shout, sending adrenaline coursing through me. "Stay down." Lila's mother barked, pushing us behind a large utility cart. The metallic scent of rusting machinery filled my nostrils as I crouched low, struggling to contain the panic building within. That a thin beam of light sliced through the darkness, searching, scouring for movements. I could feel the warmth of Lila pressed tightly against my side, a shared heartbeat in the freezing dread encasing us. "Where are they?" "They can't disappear," someone shouted from the other side, their voice thick with urgency and determination. I dared not look out, my instincts telling me that facing danger head-on could be our undoing. "They're here somewhere." The muffled voice grew louder, and I realized they were gaining ground, closing in with a swiftning pace. Panic threatened to swallow me whole. Time felt suspended, caught between the dread of discovery and the lifeline of hope. Then, something unexpected happened. The clenching hand of fear loosened for a moment when a hoarse whisper broke through the tension. "Help is on the way." It came from a young technician, eyes wide and sparkling through the dark. Follow me. In the chaos, the glimmer of kindness surged like a life buoy tossed into turbulent waters. Against my instinct to flee, I found myself captivated by his sincerity. You can trust me, he urged, glancing back to check for pursuing shadows. One lingering moment of hesitation flickered between us. Then, with an irresistible pull, I took Lila's hand and nodded toward the boy. Let's go, I urged, and without a second thought, we darted after him, the fabric of the world unraveling further behind us. Mr. Whitaker followed close, his shadow looming like a guardian against the tempest behind. The boy led us down a series of narrow corridors, the whirring of machines and distant voices creating an orchestra of anxiety. My heart thundered, its rhythm a metronome to our fleeting hopes. Just as I began to feel the tide turning in our favor, the boy stopped, pressing against an unmarked door, his expression taut with urgency. This leads to the back service elevator. It's our only shot, he said, glancing over his shoulder, every nerve pulling at him to hurry. With one last push, he flung the door open, and we crowded through, the air humming with adrenaline. The metallic scent of fear lingered behind us as we entered, and as the door latched with a heavy thud, a flicker of relief rushed through me. But before I could grasp the sense of safety, a piercing alarm blared, drowning out our breaths like the roar of waves crashing against the shore up ahead. The flickering lights cast sharp shadows, and within that embrace of darkness, another voice merged with the alarms, beckoning through the din, don't let them escape. The threat rang out with conviction, an ominous echo that knotted my stomach to go. The boy's voice trembled, pushing us toward the elevator. Now, panic lit a fire in my veins as we rushed inside, the weight of impending doom pressing down on my every movement. Lila was at my side, her hand still clasped firmly in mine, a tether holding me to this moment. As the doors began to close, I felt a desperate surge to cry out, to grasp at clarity before plunging into the unknown. But the last thing I saw was shadows rushing toward us, tendrils of fear reaching out, as the darkness pulled itself closer with a chilling certainty. Before I could draw my next breath, the thick metal doors slid shut, sealing away the chaos, but locking in the questions that would forever haunt me. What awaited us at the end of this descent? And what secrets had we unleashed into the world beyond our fragile walls? The descent rattled us in jolting rhythm, a haunting cacophony of alarms underscoring the oppressive silence we had just entered. The elevator felt too small, the air too stale, as we pressed in together, weighty anticipation hanging above us like a dark cloud. Every heartbeat felt magnified, echoing in my head like a countdown to something I couldn't yet grasp. What now? I managed to whisper, turning my gaze to the boy. His focused expression betrayed the storm of dread swirling beneath his calm surface. If we make it to the basement, there's an emergency exit that leads outside. We'll be out before anyone knows we're gone, he answered, words tumbling in rapid succession. His eyes darted nervously to the glowing panel above us that read B2, each digit lighting up like a signal of impending disaster. Lila's grip tightened around my hand, and in that moment, I wished I could draw strength from her presence, to assure her that we'd find our way through. Yet my own heart writhed with uncertainty. A billion questions clawed at my mind. Who were they? What did they want? And why did our lives hang in such precarious balance? As the elevator lurched to a stop, jolting us from our collective reverie, the kid beside us took a deep breath, steeling himself against the fear lingering in the air. The buzz of tension crackled, reminding me that we were still trapped in a cage of uncertainty, even if our immediate danger was quelled. Without waiting for hesitation, he swung the doors wide, and we stumbled into an unwelcoming corridor dimly lit by flickering fluorescent lights that cast unsettling shadows. The reality of the moment weighed heavily, and as I stepped onto the cold concrete floor, I could feel the unease creeping back into the pit of my stomach. Stay close, he urged, his voice on the edge of urgency as he led us down the narrow passage. I could hear the distant echo of footsteps fading, and with the faintest glimmer of hope, I realized that perhaps we might be free of the grasping shadows for the time being. As we walked, I took a moment to glance at Lila, her brow furrowed with determination, yet underneath I could see the flickering doubt mirrored in her eyes. Do you trust him? She asked softly. I think we have no choice, I murmured back, a bitter taste of truth escaping my lips. Yet even in that moment, I felt an appreciation for the kindness bestowed upon us, for his bravery in guiding us from the chaos that lingered just beyond our viewport to safety. Our passage continued, the distant alarms fading slightly until they were almost a ghostly whisper. "We're almost there," the boy said, almost as if sensing the mounting apprehension wrapped around us. Just a little further, suddenly, a clatter echoed behind us, followed by footsteps pounding against the concrete. My heart plummeted as dread washed over me, enveloping us in a new blanket of fear. The urgency in the boy's movements heightened as he propelled us forward, his words spilling out rapidly. "This way. We can't look back." With a final push, we stopped before a rusted steel door marked with peeling red paint that signaled a way out into the unknown. A surge of adrenaline brushed against my neck as I hesitated, grappling with the weight of what lay ahead. "What's outside?" I questioned hesitantly, my eyes scanning the boy's face for some semblance of reassurance. "Freedom," he said, an intensity in his gaze that ignited a flicker of hope, or whatever's left of it. Without a second thought, he turned the handle with a resolute shove, revealing an open-air passage that led into the soft embrace of the night. The cool air rushed in like a balm, and for just a moment, the chaos receded, replaced by the sound of crickets serenading the sky above. As we stepped out, uncertainty loomed like a fog in the distance. The landscape sprawled before us like a painting, hauntingly beautiful yet tinged with an inescapable eeriness. We were alive, but the questions still loomed like specters, menacing as ever. "What now?" I breathed, cautiously stepping forward into this new terrain. "Follow me," the boy instructed, glancing back with a semblance of urgency still etched in his features. "We can't," a sudden distant shout interrupted him, echoing through the shadows, resonating as a grim reminder that we were not yet safe. The glow of searchlights cut through the dark, illuminating the landscape into stark reality. Shock spiraled in my chest as panic bubbled back to the surface, the oppressive weight returning tenfold. The boy's eyes widened in horror. "They found us." He spun around, pushing Lila and me ahead of him as the urgency shifted into a frantic sprint. We raced forward, the world blurring around us, our steps echoing against the pavement, each footfall a reminder of our fleeting chance at freedom. As we dashed through the night, I could barely grasp our unfolding reality, the chaos behind us, the darkness ahead, and the knowledge that danger chased us insidiously, relentless as fate. "Run," he yelled, urgency swelling in his voice as we turned the corner, desperate to evade the shadows that loomed ever closer. In that harrowing moment, I glanced back to see a chilling figure emerge into the light, eyes sharp, focused, and in relentless pursuit. I felt my heart sink in my chest. My breath hitched not just from the fear of being caught, but from the realization of who was pursuing us. The weight of the night pressed down on me, heavy with revelations, and I felt the world closing in, faces of friends, of foes, of the past, all looming in the piercing shadows as the revelation began to surface. This was no longer just about survival. The horrifying truth lurked just out of reach, entwined with the very fabric of my life, whispering dark secrets I had yet to discover. And just as the tension reached its peak, as I turned to corner another street, a familiar voice silenced everything around me. "Stop. It's too late," a woman called, her voice both urgent and forlorn. I froze in my steps, the cold wind biting at my skin. Her words hung between us, ominous and heavy, echoing the dark promise of fate that loomed relentlessly ahead. The chill of the night bit at my skin, sharp and biting as I stood frozen in shock, the woman's voice cutting through the chaos like a dagger. My heart raced as I turned slowly, half expecting this figure to be a figment of my overworked imagination. As she stepped closer, the features of her face came into view. There was something vaguely familiar about her, a haunting resemblance that reawakened buried memories deeper than the panic consuming me. Her hair framed her face, long and wild, like an unshackled spirit, and I felt as though I had ventured back into another time, and a time filled with warmth, laughter, and intertwining lives that had somehow led to this very moment. "We have to go now." The boy's urgent whisper broke my reverie, urging me forward as he grabbed my arm. "They're coming." But I couldn't look away from her. Who are you?" I managed to stutter, a part of me begging for answers, even as another part screamed for me to run. "I'm someone who knows you. Someone who's been waiting for the right moment to help you," she responded, her voice both soothing and relentless, as if this was a rehearsed line long enough in the making that it felt heavy with promise and grief. "But we're out of time. Please, just trust me." Trust. The very word felt like a paradox, echoing in the closest chambers of my heart. I had been leaning on a threadbare string of trust for too long in this labyrinth of confusion and fear, and yet, here was a tether of familiarity amid the storm. The reality I knew was constructed with shadows, yet this unfamiliar flicker felt like a beacon bathed in ethereal light. Lila tugged at my sleeve, her eyes wide with that familiar cocktail of fear and hope. "We can't stay," she urged, glancing at the approach of the searching lights. "We need to go. Do you know her?" The boy hissed under his breath, glancing between the two of us. His anxiety was palpable, but my heart twisted back to the woman, the gravity of her words heavy with unspoken history. "Yes," I nodded, finally breaking the spell holding me in place. I stepped forward, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I can't explain it, but I have to know what she's trying to tell us." I felt the warmth of Lilith's hand slipping from mine as she turned toward the boy. The hesitation in her eyes mirrored my own, but mine shone through with a courageous glimmer. The woman was no longer just an apparition of the past. She drew closer, urgency radiating from her form like a tempest. "Please, you have to listen to me. I know what's ahead, and I can help you navigate it." There was no time to dissect the trust wrapped around her words, so I stepped back, glancing at the boy still urging us to escape into the shrouded darkness. "We have to choose," I whispered, feeling the weight of the choice settling heavy in my chest. "Do we run, or do we see where this leads? Trust her? Are you insane?" The boy's voice sharp, a fluttering edge of desperation splintered through his tone. Don't know," I faltered. "But I can't leave this unanswered. I can't escape without knowing who she is. Whoever is after us might be looking for her too. What if she holds the key to understanding everything?" Before the boy could retort, the lights flickered in the distance, and the echoing footsteps grew louder, a stark reminder that time was slipping from our grasp. "You're right," he said reluctantly, forcing the words through clenched teeth. "But we need to move. No time for detours." Lilith's eyes flickered between us, confusion refracting like shattered glass, but something in her heart urged her to stay in this moment. And then, in a sudden gesture, the woman reached out, placing her hand gently on my shoulder, her warmth seeping through my skin. "Listen," she said softly, "I know you feel lost, but everything is interconnected. You're not just running from something. You're running toward your own freedom." Her words were a siren's song, pulling at the tangled web of emotions that had gathered within me. I could almost feel the threads intertwining, weaving an inextricable tapestry of lives and choices. "We'll have to trust her." "Then," I breathed, my voice steadier than I felt, the conviction pulling me into the pulse of this moment. "Let's follow her." Lila nodded, fire rekindling in her gaze, and the boy hesitated only a heartbeat longer before relenting. "All right. But you have to promise that if this goes south, we make a run for it without looking back." "I promise," I replied, the words binding us together in an unspoken pact born of desperation and hope. With the urgency of our need for escape, the woman led us deeper into the thicket of shadows. Each step filled the air with the electric buzz of uncertainty, but a sliver of hope flickered in the depths of my heart, whispering that perhaps we might unravel the threads that had bound us to our fates. Suddenly, she paused, turning sharply to fix us with her gaze. "I need to show you something that will steer your choices from here on out. But it's not safe. I can't promise you everyone will make it." The gravity of her words hung heavy in the cool night air, and I felt unease leaching into the very marrow of my bones. The realization struck me, the haunting truth moving like a shadow over the pathways before us. Whatever choices lay ahead would not just affect our own lives, but the lives connected to the maze of secrets we were about to unveil. "What do you mean?" I demanded, the tremor of vulnerability escaping my lips. But before she could answer, a chilling sound reverberated through the air, a thunderous crack that split the night like a bolt of lightning. We had been discovered. Her expression darkened, and the urgency surged within her even more. "Now, you must see this. Trust me." And just as we were about to step forward, the world around us shifted dramatically. Another voice rang out, one I recognized too well, an echo from the past that threatened to upend everything I thought I knew. There they are. We have to get them now. My pulse raced as I turned to face a nightmare too close to home. The pieces of our precarious situation crumbling around us like a house of cards under a despotic wind. Everything was falling apart as secrets long buried clawed their way to the surface, threatening to unravel the fabric of everything we held dear. In that moment, a terrifying realization hit me like a wave crashing down. This was only the beginning, and time was slipping away fast. Whatever lay ahead would change our lives forever, propelling us into a maelstrom of consequences beyond our wildest fears. The world around me dissolved into a chaotic blur as I took a step closer to the woman, driven by a mix of instinct and undeniable connection. Her eyes bore the weight of centuries, ancient and knowing, as she beckoned us into the looming shadows that felt both welcoming and foreboding. "Follow me," she urged, her voice a soft command that resonated with urgency, anchoring my racing thoughts. Lila took my hand, her grip tightening, while the boy lingered for a heartbeat longer, torn between fear and resistance. We plunged into the darkness, the air thick and electric, as the sounds of our pursuers faded into the background roar of my heartbeat. The woman glided through underbrush like a specter, guiding us through the labyrinth of trees that loomed around us, silent witnesses to our flight. Each rustle of leaves felt amplified, the crunch of twigs beneath our hurried steps disorienting. But with each passing moment, I felt the thread of hope weave tighter in my chest. "Just ahead," she whispered, urgency now underscored by hints of desperation. "You have to see this, trust me." Suddenly, she halted amidst a cluster of gnarled trees, the moonlight threading its silvery fingers through the foliage, illuminating a worn path. The remnants of a dilapidated shack appeared, barely holding on to the whispers of forgotten memories. It splintered with a stark contrast against the serene backdrop of the night. I hesitated, the pulse of the place thickening around us, a feeling of decades lost, yet somehow sacred. "What is this place?" I breathed, my voice barely a whisper, almost afraid to disrupt the resonance hovering in the air. "It's where the past collides with your future," she replied cryptically, her eyes glistening as she stepped closer to the dilapidated entrance. The boy shifted beside me, apprehension clouding his features. "We shouldn't be here. What if they find us?" His voice trembled slightly, palpable fear threading through his words. "We can't leave until you understand this," the woman insisted, turning to him with an intensity that made the air crackle. "Everything you run from is rooted right here. You need to confront it." Lila squeezed my hand again, her eyes searching mine for reassurance. "What if it's a trap? Then we'll fight our way out," I murmured, conviction simmering beneath the surface of uncertainty. I took a step forward, propelled by the need for answers and a desire to break the cycle of fear that had wrapped around us like a shroud. As we entered the shack, the air shifted heavy with nostalgia and bitter memories. Inside, the faint outline of objects was obscured by shadows, but the oppressive weight of loss echoed through the walls. Dust motes danced in the shafts of light, each particle swirling as if caught in a moment suspended in time. "It's your history," the woman whispered, gesturing toward a collection of photographs hanging crookedly on the peeling walls. "Each one holds a fragment of the truth you seek. You need to see them to know how to escape this." I stepped closer. The details began to emerge through the shadows, faces frozen in smiles, moments captured that tugged at my heart. I felt my breath catch as I recognized the older woman in one of the photos, her features youthful yet hauntingly familiar, the same spirit I saw in the woman before me. "Is this you?" I stammered, my pulse racing through confusion and revelation. "No," she said softly. "That's my mother. She was a part of your life once. Like a thread, she weaved into yours, and when she left, when we lost everything, it changed the course of our lives." That accord within me resonated, years of painful exile unfurling in a rush. "But why? Why did you leave?" "There were choices made, choices that intertwined our fates," she replied, sorrow etching paths across her face. "But now you have the chance to change everything." The boy stepped in front of the photographs, his eyes narrowing. What good is knowing your past if it only brings more danger? Before we could respond, another noise splintered the air. A thunderous crash emanated from outside, drowning our thoughts in fear. "It's them," Lila whispered, terror flooding her voice. I could see the fissures of panic carving pathways across her face. "Get back," I shouted, my body responding before my mind could fully grasp what was happening. The woman turned, her gaze locking onto mine, the intensity sparking once again. "Listen to me. You have to decide now. Do you want to confront your past or address this immediate danger?" In that breathless moment, a shuddering choice unfurled before me. Confront the shadows of my lineage or face the darkness that pursued us. My heart pounded fiercely against my ribcage, the weight of the world riding on the cusp of decision. "Well, face the danger here. We can't let them take this from us," I declared, every nerve ignited by resolve. This decision felt monumental, a fracture in time that could reverberate through generations. As we turned once more toward the entrance, the shadows receding behind us, I felt the pull of destiny thrumming in my veins. But suddenly, a figure appeared in the doorway, silhouetted against the moonlight shining through the gaps in the wood. I squinted, my heart dropping as recognition lit up the night. A familiar face twisted in a menacing smile, harbinger of unknown intentions, the embodiment of fears I thought buried. "Missed you, dear," a voice smooth as silk called out, chillingly familiar. "I've come for what's ours." In that catastrophic instant, the weight of everything hung suspended, the fragile threads of fate threatening to snap, and whatever lay ahead would shape the lives we fought so fiercely to reclaim. The air hummed with tension, and I felt the world tilt on its axis as I stood frozen before the doorway. This figure, this ghost from my past, had returned to haunt us at the most critical moment. The man who had once been my mentor, a paternal figure in my life, now stood with an air of menace that twisted my stomach in knots. "William," I breathed, every ounce of control fighting to hold back the wave of shock. His smile, once a source of comfort, had morphed into something sinister. Behind him loomed the shadows of betrayal, and I realized that this was a man who had played a role in every tragedy I had faced, a puppeteer of unfathomable strings. The boy flinched next to me, and I could feel Lila's heart pounding next to mine, evident in her wide eyes. There was no safe passage back now. "Do you think you can just walk away from this?" William asked, his voice curling around us like smoke. "You don't get to run from your own blood." A flicker of recognition sparked in me, mingling with the bottled rage inside my chest. Blood. Those were the very chains that bound me to him and to this moment. "What do you want from me?" I demanded, my voice stronger than I felt. "To reunite our families," he replied, the fake sweetness a mask over sickly toxicity. "To reclaim what is rightfully ours." I stepped forward, Lila and the boy pressing closer behind me. "What are you talking about? You're nothing more than a parasite feeding off the weakness of others." The words came out sharper than I intended, fueled by unadulterated fear and the lingering pain of all his betrayals. William's face darkened momentarily, but then he laughed at an unsettling sound that echoed around us, sending shivers down my spine. "You think you're safe, don't you? But you're part of this, whether you like it or not. Your decisions have consequences." The shadows I had been staring into now felt more like a living thing, pulsing against the weight of my heart. I needed to shift the momentum. There was no more time. "Lila, stay back," I hushed, turning my attention back to William. "You won't get anything from me." "Oh, but that's where you're wrong," William continued, the smirk etched on his face. "Your family lineage is as tangled in power as you think. You are the key." More secrets swelled from his lips, twisting like vines around my heart. The knowledge that buried beneath his words were implications of my heritage of power I had never sought, but had inherited all the same. "What do you mean?" It slipped from my mouth, trembling under the weight of disbelief. "The Whitakers and your bloodline have been intertwined for generations, businesses and fortunes built upon the backs of our forefathers. You are the last piece of this puzzle, the last Whitaker able to mend what your father broke." The smug satisfaction in his voice spat like venom. I could feel the air in the room grow thick, wrapping around me like chains. With every detail, he divulged layers of histories that were no longer just stories blurred by time, but tangible connections that tethered me to this man before me. My mind raced, trying to unspool the narrative William was spinning, yet my heart clung to instinct and emotion rather than reason. That's a lie, I shouted, conviction bubbling over. I will never align myself with you. But doubt began to creep in, whispering into the crevices of my mind. Was everything I had learned about my family true? Was there a path entwining me to the Whitakers that I had been blindly evading? Join me, and you can reclaim your birthright. Fight against me, and I will make sure you regret every moment you've wasted running. His voice hardened, a predator staked in its ground. In a flash, Lila stepped forward, defiance sparking like wildfire in her emerald eyes. You don't own him. You can't control who he becomes. And for just a moment, I saw the light of possibility, the one I had felt flickering since this nightmare began. I wasn't alone. It surged within me, the knowledge that my fate was not solely tethered to blood. They were right here, supporting me, grounding me. William, listen. I will face whatever truth lies in my past, but not with you, I declared, feeling the weight of my decisions shift in the air like a pendulum swaying toward freedom. If my family has been intertwined with the Whitakers, then it's time to carve a new path. His expression faltered, a flicker of doubt seeping in. You think you can just sever the ties of generations? Why not let me guide you? I shook my head, the memory of my mother's work permeating my resolve. Guidance. Or manipulation. You only want power, you don't care about what's right. Enough. The force of his sharp tongues ignited a storm in the room. This can't be how it ends. You think you have choices, but you don't know where that leads. But somewhere deep within the embers of fear, I caught fire, fueled by every moment of suffering that led me to this confrontation. I know exactly where it led, me reclaiming what was stolen from my soul. I'm ready to face my past, but not with you. Rage contorted his face as shadows shifted ominously behind him. It was as if those specters recognized his frailty, unveiling my resolve against his arrogance. For a moment, I allowed anger to turn to strength. William, I spat, energy igniting my voice. You've stolen enough time from me. I won't let you take any more. The weight of the moment balanced on a knife's edge. But we stood together, a united front, the boy breathing stalwart strength beside me, Lila lending courage to our convictions. This was our time, threading our outcomes instead of letting someone else dictate our destinies. And in that swirling chaos, I began to understand. It wasn't merely about seeking freedom. It was about reclaiming my identity, my family, and everything that was rightfully mine. Run, I yelled, gripping Lila's hand and the boy's wrist, as I sprang forward toward the dim light that illuminated the doorway behind William. With every ounce of strength I propelled into my legs, I shattered the confines of the room, the world exploding into color as we surged past him. Stop. His roar echoed through the night, but I felt an energy transform my fear into fierce determination. Freedom didn't await in chains. It awaited in the coming twilight, an open horizon beckoning me toward a brighter future. In that moment, we burst into the night shadows lapping at our heels, embracing the unknown stretching infinitely before us. And just as we crossed the threshold into the cool air outside, I turned back one last time, catching a glimpse of chaos unfolding behind me. William was trapped in the shack, shadows flickering around him, a metaphor now for lost power and unfurling consequences. You can't escape your past, he shouted heatedly, but the weight of those words fell flat against the promise of my own future. With freedom stretching ahead, I pulled Lila and the boy close, ready to forge a new destiny as the echoes of the night faded behind us like fragments of a life long since lived. Together, I whispered to them, the dawn approaching, an ungarbled truth threading its way through my soul. The chase was not over. We would face what came next, but now we faced it as a united force. And as the first rays of dawn kissed the horizon, I felt embers of hope ignite in my soul. Standing together, we carved our own destinies amid the starlight fading behind us, the ultimate crescendo of a symphony forever changed by our refusal to surrender. With a breath full of promises, I whispered the words that anchored me amid the tempest. We rise from the ashes, no longer defined by the past. We write our own story. And in that moment, it felt as though the universe conspired to weave our narratives into something extraordinary, leaving a trail of shimmering stars in the wake of our flight. Together, we would embrace the dawn,